morning, everyone. This is my picture. Bye-bye.
Hello everyone, I'm Chu, 75 years old, living in the countryside of northern Vietnam. If you watched my previous videos, you've probably seen how peaceful our village looks. We have vast green rice fields, a backyard garden that provides our daily food, birds chirping every morning, and neighbors who genuinely look out for one another. Many of my international friends often leave comments saying, "Wow, life over there looks like a paradise. I wish I could move there when I retire." Hearing that always brings a smile to my face. But to be completely honest with you, there is a realistic side to this paradise that I must share. Our quiet village seems to be losing the laughter of its young people more and more each day. These days, if you take a walk around my neighborhood on a weekday, you will notice a very specific sight. The village is mostly filled with seniors like my wife and me, and little toddlers who aren't old enough for school yet. The strong young men and the bright young women, where did they all go? The truth is, they have packed their bags and left the shelter of our village to head up to major cities like Hanoi, Haiphong, or Ho Chi Minh City to build their careers. So, what exactly drives them to leave the land where they were born and raise the place with their mother's warm home-cooked meals and their father's sturdy house, just to throw themselves into the crowded, bustling life of the city? Today, as a 75-year-old man who has seen generations come and go, I'd like to share my realistic take on this story with you. Before we dive in, I'd love to ask, is this happening in your country too? Are the young people leaving your hometowns for the big cities? Please share your stories in the comments below, as I'm very curious to learn about life in your part of the world. The first and most practical reason comes down to putting food on the table and managing daily expenses. Back in the early 2000s, my wife and I managed to hold on to a few plots of land growing rice and flowers to put our 2 children through college. Back then, almost the entire village survived on farming, and though it was hard work, we were all in the same boat. But times have changed, my friends. Today, to be completely frank, traditional farming in my hometown brings very little financial reward. After working tirelessly in the fields for 3 or 4 months, once you sell the rice and subtract the costs for fertilizer, plowing, and pest control, the profit left over is barely anything at all. If it happens to be a bad year with heavy storms, you end up breaking even or falling into debt. For old folks like us, our daily needs are minimal. We can live comfortably and frugally on vegetables picked from our garden and fish from the pond at the back of our property. But the young people are different. They need savings to get married, raise their own children, pay for education, and eventually look after their aging parents. Since job opportunities in rural areas are incredibly scarce, the city naturally becomes a powerful magnet drawing them away. The second reason is rooted in a cultural aspect I talked about recently, the heavy burden of social pressure in rural Vietnam. There is a deeply ingrained mindset in many families that says once your children finish school, they must work in a big city to be considered successful. If a young person graduates from college and chooses to pack their bags to return to the village to farm or take a modest local job, the neighborhood broadcast immediately goes to work. People will start whispering behind their backs, "Hey, look at that kid. Their parents spent so much money sending them to college in Hanoi, and now they're back here doing manual labor. They probably couldn't find a real job up there." Those whispers create an invisible, crushing weight on the shoulders of these young people and on their parents too. To prove themselves and to help their parents hold their heads high among the neighbors, they feel forced to stay in the city. They accept living in tiny rented rooms, eating rushed meals, and facing heavy traffic and smog every single day. This pressure to look successful before your neighbors is a huge part of our culture here. Does this kind of small town gossip and pressure exist where you live? Do people in your country also judge your success based on your job or where you choose to live? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Watching the young folks leave our village in waves, an old man like me can't help but feel a quiet ache in my heart. In fact, this very same story is playing out right inside my own family. My son is married, but because he was deeply worried about his mother and me growing old and living all by ourselves, he made a choice that both touches my heart and breaks it a little. He chose to sacrifice the privacy of his own young marriage to bring a sense of comfort to our old age. He left his wife and children here in the countryside to live with me while he works all alone up in the big city to earn a living and send money back home. Fortunately, my daughter-in-law is well educated and managed to find a job at a small local bank nearby, which helps our household quite a bit. But what always weighs heavily on my mind is that in order to provide us with a comfortable, modern house for the rest of our days, my son had to take out a very large bank loan. Sometimes I sit and think to myself, if my son had been just a little bit selfish like some other young men, he could have used that money to make a down payment on a place in Hanoi. He could have brought his wife and kids up there to live together and just come back to visit us once in a while. That way, his young family wouldn't have to be separated and my grandchildren could grow up with a modern education. I feel a bit helpless because my son worries so much for me and carries such a massive burden, yet at 75 years old, there is absolutely nothing I can do to help him pay off that debt. On those rainy nights when I hear the water dripping off the roof, my heart squeezes with sympathy, knowing he is out there navigating the lonely, crowded streets of the city all by himself. Even though Hanoi and our neighboring province of Nam Dinh are only about 90 kilometers apart, my children haven't been able to afford a car yet. To save every penny for the house debt, my son currently stays at his in-laws' place in Hanoi. Every single Friday night, after a long, exhausting work week, he rushes to catch a bus, traveling that long distance just to spend the weekend with his aging parents, his wife, and his little kids. Those brief 2 days are the only time his young family gets to be whole. But then I remind myself, instead of sitting here feeling sad or helpless, what is the best thing I can actually do for my children? The answer is simple. I must live happily, stay positive, and look after my health as best as I can. Every day, I tend to our vegetable garden, raise our chickens, take my Herbalife supplements regularly, monitor my blood pressure, and keep my spirit light and joyful. Staying healthy and smiling is the greatest way I can lighten the load on my son's shoulders, giving him true peace of mind while he works hard in the city. Young people don't leave because they dislike their hometown. On the contrary, they carry the future of the entire family on their backs. The beautiful homes you see rising up in my village today are mostly built from the sweat, tears, and emotional sacrifices of young families like mine. Life is a series of choices and trade-offs. The city gives young people opportunities but takes away their peace. The countryside gives us tranquility but lacks opportunity. The most important thing isn't where you live, but knowing who you are working so hard for and taking full responsibility for that choice Life is a series of choices and trade offs. The city gives young people opportunities but takes away their peace. The countryside gives us tranquility but lacks opportunity. The most important thing isn't where you live, but knowing who you are working so hard for and taking full responsibility for that choice. Thank you so much for listening to the heartfelt reflections of an old countryman. If this story touched your heart or made you think about your own family dynamics, please don't forget to give me a like and consider subscribing to my channel. Drop a comment to let me know how family generations support one another in your culture. Goodbye for now, take care, and I'll see you all again in our next video.